Do I, 26F, have unrealistic expectations? Or does my 29M partner need to start taking accountability? This is my first time posting something like this, but I am at a turning point regarding what to do, and I am seeking guidance. I will organize this into background information, examples, what I have already attempted to resolve this, and my reasoning for why or why not I should mention it. Background: my boyfriend and I have been in a relationship for about 2 years and have cohabitated for nearly 1 year. I genuinely love our connection and hope it continues to develop and endure, but I am extremely frustrated lately with specific behaviors from him, and I am unsure how to address them, or whether I even should. I question whether I should raise the issue, or if I have any justification to bring it up because, upon reflecting on the past 2 years, this behavior has been consistently present. I feel I have reached the straw that broke the camel's back moment, and I now find it difficult to trust his word. My boyfriend is quite unreliable when it comes to fulfilling any commitments he makes for our relationship. He is not generally an inconsistent person and excels in his career, but when it comes to anything I ask or remind him to do, he rarely follows through. Examples: 1. Tardiness or no-shows. Our first significant argument occurred because he would inform me that he would arrive at a set time, but would often show up hours late. I am not overly punctual, so I was fine with this initially, but I requested that he either share his location or communicate if he would be late, which he strongly resisted. I explained that I generally do not mind if he is late, but it is disrespectful to my time and that of others. Specific instances include him promising to bring my medication that I accidentally left with him, and then bailing at the last minute, hosting a dinner party while we waited for hours for him to arrive, and meeting him out, only to be left waiting alone in the cold because of his lateness. 2. Financial matters. We use a shared application to manage expenses for rent and travel. He consistently assures me that he will update his share, but months go by without him doing it, leaving him with a debt. After 7 months, he owed me $5,000 excluding his expenses, and I ran out of patience. Ultimately, it took him about 2 hours to handle it, but I felt like the bad person for losing my temper. 3. Lack of respect for my work schedule. We both work for large financial organizations with very demanding roles. I make an effort to ensure that I am considerate of his needs when he is in the apartment while I am on camera, making sure to be quiet and taking numerous calls from the bathroom to avoid disturbing him. However, there have only been 3 instances where I have asked for the same courtesy, and he fell short. One example involved traveling for personal reasons, where we both had meetings in the main city about an hour away. We agreed that he would drop me off at my office before an important call with my supervisor, after which he would proceed to his meeting. I had 2 handbags and a roller suitcase since we were moving cities that night. I was up and ready in the morning, reminding him of our plan, but he was slow to get going, and we left much later than expected. I ended up taking my call from the car in an area with poor Wi-Fi, which was unprofessional. Afterward, he dropped me off at his meeting, and I had to take an Uber to my office with all my bags, as the car was being returned. He blamed me for not asking someone else to take the lead last minute. Aside from the professional disappointment, I was upset that he would leave me with 3 bags on a sidewalk in an unfamiliar city. 4. Airport pickup. Apologies for the lengthy message, but here is another instance. When we were traveling, he promised to pick me up from the airport after a very long work trip. I mentioned that my bags were heavy and that I had caught what seemed to be the flu during the trip, so it was reassuring that he would come to pick me up. During my layover, I informed him that the airline I was flying with did not have Wi-Fi, so I would be unable to text him when we were 30 minutes from landing, but I provided him with the flight details. Upon landing, I called him, and he sounded half asleep and confused by my call. I decided to take an Uber instead since he was 30 minutes away, and I did not want to wait an additional 30 minutes for a 30-minute drive. I explicitly asked him to meet me when the Uber arrived to assist with my heavy bags up 5 flights of stairs, and I sent him the arrival time and tracking information. When I arrived, he was nowhere to be seen. Upon reaching the door, he simply said, "Oh, cool, you're here," instead of expressing excitement. I explained how hurtful his lack of consideration was when I needed him, and he said it was my fault for not texting him when I landed, despite my lack of Wi-Fi, and added that he does not check flight statuses as it is not something he typically does. 5. Needs constant reminders. If I do not remind him 3 times, he will not complete tasks. I rarely, if ever, ask for assistance, so if I request help, it is genuinely important. If I ask him to pick something up or if he commits to a task, such as exchanging currency before a trip, it will not be done unless I remind him at least 3 times. Often, I just end up handling it myself. One time, while I was working abroad and he had a day off, I asked him to pick up a specific snack available only in that city while I was in the office. He agreed, and I was excited about him getting it. By the end of the day, when the shops were closed, I asked him about the snack, and he replied, "Oh, I forgot. You should have reminded me." What I have already attempted to do to resolve this one. In each of the situations mentioned, I addressed why they were not only annoying but also potentially harmful or damaging. I have tried to explain logically, but he always finds a loophole to put the blame on me, such as the issue of me not texting despite lacking Wi-Fi. 2. We have a whiteboard at home with important reminders, dates, etc. We maintain a shared calendar for events so he can see reminders on his phone, and since he enjoys using a specific organizational tool, I created a relationship tracker where we could monitor shared household tasks. I also confirm anything with him in person, follow up through text, and remind him, but none of these attempts have improved the situation. Why I feel I should mention it. 1. In my opinion, this is constructive feedback that I would hope a partner would offer me. Additionally, I am unsure to what extent he may also exhibit this behavior with friends, family, or co-workers, who might not be as forgiving. 2. I have repeatedly stated how important accountability is to me and how painful some of these experiences have been. If my partner told me he was doing something fixable that hurt him, I would change my behavior immediately. 3. While I may be overly affected by these seemingly simple issues, I still believe they were unfair and that there were no valid excuses for their lack of resolution. I feel that consistently letting people down indicates a lack of prioritization, and as his partner, I deserve a bit more effort from him, which should come naturally if he wants to make me happy. 4. It concerns me for our future. For instance, if we were to get a pet, I would feel like a mother whose child keeps promising to take care of the puppy, knowing it is her responsibility in the end. 5. I am continuously going out of my way to assist him and make nice gestures for him. I manage the household so he doesn't have to think about meals, laundry, cleaning, or groceries. When he asks me for something, I complete it promptly. I am more than happy to do this because I love him and derive genuine joy from doing things that make his life easier. I don't think it is unreasonable to expect him to want the same for me, though many friends believe I already do too much for him. Why I am conflicted about addressing this issue. 1. This pattern has been consistent over time. I can't criticize him or be upset 2 years later about something fundamental that hasn't changed. 2. I don't want him to feel as if I am keeping score against him or that he needs to be on high alert. 3. I worry that this behavior might be somewhat normal. Please inform me if it is, and that I need to adjust my expectations. 4. I want to avoid starting a conflict. He is genuinely very busy with work, and I do not want to add to his stress. In summary, is my boyfriend's lack of accountability a reasonable topic for me to discuss and request a change in behavior? Or should I accept that this is simply how he is? Have any of you experienced similar situations and have advice you could offer? Thank you for taking the time to read this. I appreciate any insights you may have. Story 2. M40F40. Are these messages acceptable between my wife and her male friend? M40F40, together 21 years, married 17. Summary: the images linked depict conversations between my wife and a man, an ex-coworker of hers who lives across the country, whom she insists is merely a friend. These messages are what I find most troubling, particularly those exchanged within the past year. Am I justified in thinking that these messages are inappropriate? The text images, https imgurcom, and is this acceptable conversation when married UKR 464L? Edit: when I had the incorrect link, which seemingly altered the order of the messages. Extended context first, I apologize to those of you who choose to read this distressing situation. I also appreciate the sincere and constructive comments from some. I am extremely upset and feel mentally overwhelmed. I have reached a point where I believe that divorce may be the only viable option. A few years ago, I discovered that I am autistic and have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Therefore, I realize that I may perceive things differently than most people, yet I find it very difficult to come to terms with the idea that these messages are acceptable behavior in a marriage and committed relationship. Yesterday, my wife stated that she does not see any issue with the messages she sent when I directly asked her if she thought they were inappropriate. I attempted to arrange the photos in chronological order, but encountered some difficulties. I apologize for that. If there is enough interest, I can share the background of our relationship and the other factors that have led me to seek advice from others. Because at this moment, I feel as if I am drowning. I am a mess shaking, feeling hot and cold, as if my heart is racing like it did the first time I consumed a large energy drink and a 30-ounce coffee 2 decades ago. Background: I was raised in a strict Christian environment, with the belief of no sex before marriage, one partner only, and divorce being out of the question. For instance, when I moved out and informed my dad that I was continuing my relationship with my girlfriend, he asked if we had been intimate. When I answered yes, his response was, "You don't have intimate relations with someone without marrying them." I had 2 girlfriends prior to my wife. I only kissed one and held hands with the other. I had never had sexual relations before meeting my wife. She was raised with a more lenient view, suggesting that one should wait until turning 18 to engage in sexual activity. She had 3 partners before we became a couple. Situation context: we have been attempting to rebuild our relationship after I discovered in 2018 that she had cheated on me in 2013 with another coworker while I moved to another state for work and was seeking a new home for us. There is more to this, but it is not relevant to the current situation aside from my emotional state. She began seeing the man from the texts more frequently after he left their workplace, sometime around 2015. She would go visit him after work, bringing him dinner without informing me that she would not be returning home, or I would arrive home to find that she was out. I lost my temper at her behavior and expressed that it was too reminiscent of how she acted during her affair in 2012. When the man moved out of state, my concern seemed to dissipate since he essentially ghosted her during his relocation. She was quite upset by this, and when he reached out again after a year or so, she was thrilled. I informed her that I was uneasy with their relationship, believing he represents a substitute for the man from 2012. I do not want to dictate her actions or be controlling, so I emphasized that I was uncomfortable with the relationship and would not approve of conversations if they turned sexual, specifically, sexting. For instance, you can ask if you were intimate on your date. Fine. What do you enjoy in bed? I am uncomfortable, but okay. I want to do that with you in bed. Unacceptable. I requested that if any conversations became sexual or she wanted them to, we would communicate about it. She expressed that she did not want to terminate the friendship, but agreed to inform me of any shifts in feelings and desires. After attempting to resolve issues through therapy since 2020, we have been exploring non-monogamy. We had a threesome, and I have been with 2 other women. Things in the bedroom and our communication have significantly improved. Therapy and open conversations have brought me a sense of relief that I wish we could have experienced 2 decades ago. Dramatic context: in 2022, she assisted a friend with a move across the country, taking a road trip. She wanted to stop by and see his place and possibly have dinner. While I stated I was uncomfortable with her visiting him, I consented since she would be with her friend. I only requested that when she arrived in town and checked into her hotel, she should text or call me before seeing him. She did not do this, and afterward, she was apologetic while I was losing my composure. The most upsetting part was that her friend was tired and had a headache, electing to stay at the hotel. She became so caught up in checking into the hotel that she forgot to call or text me before visiting him alone. I lost my cool, and during the past 2 years, we have been working on fixing our relationship. More therapy for me, better communication, and I am feeling acknowledged and validated. Things have been getting markedly better. The drama in October, we were discussing something, and I cannot recall how we arrived at the topic, but she mentioned, when I cuddled with him. I slammed on the brakes. What? She claims she had informed me. I certainly would have reacted strongly if she had. She asserts that nothing else transpired and they were simply reading a book. Honestly, that seems likely. We are all avid readers, and I know the man from their time working together. We used to share book recommendations before he left the state. Anyhow, this has been troubling me for 2 months, until Friday the 13th occurred. We had a conversation the night before, and something she said while we discussed past behaviors to address the issues that have made our relationship fragile stuck with me overnight as I stared at the ceiling. Friday morning, I grabbed her phone and started going through texts, other male coworkers, etc. Nothing strange at all. Then I opened their conversation. Part of our resolution efforts since 2020 was the agreement that she would not lock her phone, allowing me to view any messages if I chose. The same goes for her side. I looked at it once back in 2020 and encountered no issues, so I did not look again until recently. His name in her phone is Head-On, short for hedonistic. The first message I saw was, "Yes, Daddy." I completely lost my mind. I felt a pit in my stomach, wanting to vomit, and started scrolling back further. I reached the end of 2024 and had to set the phone down. I exploded. Providing that context is crucial to understanding why I am so upset. Over our 21 years together, she has consistently said she refuses to call me Daddy because of her stepfather, not wanting to associate me with him. That makes sense to me. However, it seems that restriction has finally relaxed, perhaps in the last year or two during our role play in the bedroom. Since then, she has deleted the conversation thread, claiming it is to avoid seeing his name and feeling tempted to reach out. This has been simmering inside me for the past month, and our discussion yesterday has driven me to a breaking point once more. Context regarding some of the chat messages: 1. She was deliberately avoiding completing her final papers. 2. Roadhead apparently refers to intimate encounters during commutes. 3. Yes, that is a photo of dildo measurements. Her explanation is that it was a medical discussion, not sexual, and that she has shared this information with her female coworkers too. 4. I think I have received flowers maybe twice in 21 years. Yes, I believe flowers are unnecessary and a waste of resources. Nevertheless, I still give them to her occasionally, about once or twice a year, though I would appreciate feeling considered. 5. He received a vasectomy, and she sent him a care package of items. I recall discussing that when it occurred and was fine with it. I also underwent the procedure, and an ice pack can indeed be a nice gesture. 6. Her betting on an orgasm is among my biggest grievances. We have engaged in similar bets for years regarding obscure actors' identities. We usually settle those bets, so her making such a wager with another man drives me mad. She remains oblivious to any issues, arguing that because she does not see him, it is not a problem. I feel utterly lost today. Story 3. How can I, 34F, get closure after he, 24M, told me he can't handle a relationship? I apologize in advance for the lengthy post. I am a 34-year-old female. I connected on Facebook dating over a month ago with a 24-year-old male. I was quite hesitant to even entertain the thought of conversing, let alone going on a date with someone significantly younger than me. But this individual appeared straightforward and uninterested in playing mind games, so we decided to meet for our first date on New Year's Eve. The date went well. We met at a relaxed brewery, and while he couldn't drink due to having a driving while intoxicated charge and having a breathalyzer installed in his car, we engaged in a deep conversation for more than 4 hours, genuinely getting to know each other without holding back. He's a carpenter with strong ambitions of eventually starting his own business. He is highly driven and very self-reliant. I work in healthcare and have established my career, ready to settle down and start a family, and I was upfront about this. He comes from a challenging background with 2 very unsupportive parents. His mother had an affair with one of his friends when she was 15 years old and allowed them to use drugs in the basement at that age. He experienced sexual activity at the age of 12, long before he was even able to ejaculate. He lived a rebellious lifestyle. Although he never went to jail, he was obviously a troubled youth. I related to this as my older brother had a similar experience, and my mother was very mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive towards me, which caused a lot of emotional harm. After our initial date, he arranged our second outing at a venue where we could create our own scented candles and sprays. which was a really enjoyable and unique experience. We had lunch together and spent the entire day and night enjoying each other's company. We went out for drinks, and I invited him to stay over, as we seemed to have a genuine connection given all the time we had spent together and the things we shared. The following day, we spent the entire day together, met up with my friend and her boyfriend to go ice skating, and then went out to eat and to an arcade before dropping them off for the night. In the next few weeks, we began seeing each other regularly. He picked me up from the train station when I returned from visiting family and took me out to dinner, always insisting on covering the expenses. He continuously drove the 40-minute distance from his house to mine to see me. I insisted on visiting him once to see where he lived, even though he mentioned there was nothing to do in his area. We made the best of it and still enjoyed ourselves. He has a strained relationship with his father, who is an alcoholic and often insists on taking him to bars to bond over drinking, even when he does not want to go. If he asks for a ride somewhere because his truck is being repaired, his father tends to sabotage the trip by heading straight to a bar instead. This has resulted in him having to walk through the snow for miles to get home. On paper, it seems like this guy and I should not be compatible. He appears to be a disaster, and I seem to be more conventional. Yet we connect effortlessly, and there is a substantial sense of comfort and security between us. Fast forward to last week, his truck began experiencing numerous issues, and he has been handling all the repairs himself to save money. He had to replace his U-joints, spark plugs, battery, and sensors. This situation was causing him a considerable amount of stress since he drives over an hour to work each day. He asked if I wanted to have dinner on Thursday since I was off work, but I had already made plans with a friend to go to the mall, so I suggested we meet over the weekend instead. I offered for him to come over after I finished work on Friday and he could spend the night until Saturday. He agreed but mentioned he needed to ensure his U-joints were replaced and his inspection passed since he had already received a ticket. He promised to let me know. When Friday came, he said he would likely come over and planned to leave work early to fix his truck, but then he seemed to disappear. He has previously admitted to being a poor texter, which has bothered me slightly as I enjoy texting. However, he still uses an old iPhone and is rarely on it. When we are together, he hardly touches his phone, and he says he does not want to be one of those guys who is constantly on their devices at work. As Friday progressed, I started to wonder why I had not heard from him. It's not unusual for his phone to die or for him to be in an area with poor reception, so I did not panic when my messages turned green. However, when 4 or more hours passed without a response, I began to feel a little concerned. I started to feel unwell at work and decided to leave early. Once home, I attempted to text him a few more times and called, finally receiving a message around 10 p.m. saying he had just finished installing everything. I asked if he still intended to come over but received no reply. I went to sleep. The next day, he texted me to apologize, explaining that although he had finished, another belt had broken and he needed to fix that. He mentioned he went home and just passed out from exhaustion. I told him it was okay, but I expressed that I would have appreciated him keeping me updated instead of leaving me in the dark. I asked if he still planned on coming over, but again, I received no response. Hours passed, and I grew increasingly frustrated at his lack of communication. I sent a message expressing that I did not appreciate his poor texting and communication, especially since we had made tentative plans, and that moving forward, this was not something I would be willing to accept. There was still no reply. 7 hours after his last message, he finally responded, admitting I was correct and that I deserved better communication. He stated that he felt we were progressing into a relationship too quickly and did not feel prepared for it, despite how wonderful I am. He acknowledged that my message about his texting habits made him realize he wasn't ready for a relationship. I replied, conveying my understanding, even though it hurt. I asked if he wanted to continue seeing each other at a slower pace, and he responded that he did not believe it was a good idea, fearing he would be leading me on. He felt we were very different individuals in different mental phases, which I had initially pointed out to him due to my apprehension about dating someone younger. He mentioned that he did not want to waste my time, acknowledging I was eager to start a family, which he was not prepared for at this time. I inquired about what he believed had changed since we discussed these matters before, but I accepted everything he said gracefully. He expressed remorse for wasting my time, stating he felt terrible and didn't want to convey this, but just wasn't ready for a relationship. I asked if we could speak over the phone instead of texting, but he never replied. He had also left his baseball cap and charging cable at my place, and I asked if he wanted to meet somewhere to collect them, but he again did not respond. I was particularly hurt by this, especially since I noticed him viewing my Instagram stories without replying to my texts. 2 days later, he reached out, apologizing for not responding sooner. He mentioned he had been contemplating his words and felt terrible about the situation. He continued by saying that I am a wonderful person and wanted me to understand it was not about anything I did or that he found someone else. It was none of that. He stated he enjoyed spending time with me and considered me to be funny, attractive, intelligent, and kind. However, he felt everything progressed too quickly, and despite thinking he was ready, once reality set in, he realized his life was a mess and he had much to sort out. He wants to tackle his personal stress alone without dragging someone else into it. Furthermore, he acknowledged that I am someone who wants to help, but he felt he couldn't let me do anything for him when he couldn't reciprocate what I need and deserve. He expressed that while he did not want to stop knowing each other, he also didn't want to give me false hope, and he wanted to continue communicating, whatever that might entail. I responded by summarizing that I needed time and space to determine what would be best for me. However, I sought clarification on what he was looking for. Was he hoping to reconnect in the future when his life became more stable? Did he want a permanent friendship? What did he believe he needed to accomplish in his life to reach his desired point? I stated I needed to think about whether maintaining contact was in my best interest, given my feelings for him and my uncertainty about navigating communication without causing myself further pain. He still has not replied. What do you all think? Story 4. Me, 20F, and my boyfriend, 23M, need help. My boyfriend, 23 male, and I, 20 female, have been in a relationship for nearly 2 years. I honestly consider him my best friend and soulmate, and until about a month ago, I could never imagine us apart. In the past 4 to 5 months, he became involved in trading cryptocurrencies and has done little else since then. I have tried to be patient and let him pursue his interests, but it began to frustrate me when we couldn't even watch our favorite shows together because he was always on his phone. This also happened when we were out doing anything else, which didn't help matters. I would gently ask him if he could put his phone away, but often he would respond with anger and annoyance, so I decided to ease off. As time went on, I felt like I was walking on eggshells around him because he seemed increasingly disinterested in me and was not making any effort. Whenever I brought this up, he would completely ignore my concerns and turn the blame back on me. This made me anxious about voicing my feelings, regardless of what they were. I have struggled with depression for a long time, and he is well aware of this, as he is familiar with how I can feel at any moment. In the early days of our relationship, he was incredibly supportive and learned how to help me, which made such a difference, but now it feels like that support has disappeared. About 2 weeks ago, he lost all his money from cryptocurrency trading. He had invested a total of £500 of his own money. He has a good job, so he could afford it, and he invested gradually, and managed to grow it to around £10,000, which he ultimately lost. Since then, he has not been himself, and although I have tried to support him, he has made it very difficult by saying that I cannot help him. If I attempt to reassure him and say that everything will be okay, he responds that it obviously will not be because he has lost so much. I am deeply empathetic, and whenever he is feeling down, I am always by his side, but that support is no longer reciprocal, and it hasn't been for a while. In the last 2 weeks, he has become even more distant from me. He says he just wants to recover his money, which I understand and have expressed to him, but he has completely stopped making any effort. His attitude and tone toward me have become increasingly rude and disrespectful, which I have always found problematic, but now it is significantly worse. I have raised these issues with him and made my feelings known. I have genuinely been feeling mentally worse than I have in a long time, but when I discuss my feelings with him, he becomes very angry and agitated, often saying he does not care. He told me that whenever he feels upset, he does not care about anyone or anything. Last night, When I was experiencing a severe mental breakdown and shared my suicidal thoughts with him, he simply said he could not do anything and that he did not care at that moment because he was not in a good mood. Throughout everything, I have been trying to explain the importance of support and expressing care, but he seems to detest it. He told me today that he is starting to hate me because I won't stop talking about these issues. I have told him that I cannot continue in this manner as I feel unhappy when I am around him. I recently started a new job this week, and I absolutely love it. I have made some friends, which is not something that usually happens for me, as I am not a very confident person. However, this week at work has been a positive experience, but as soon as I finish and am around him, I feel lost and numb. Another thing is that tonight we are supposed to go to a rave with one of his friends, whom I know, along with 2 friends of his other friend. I am obviously feeling uneasy about tonight, but usually he stays with me, and we support one another. However, I have a bad feeling about this evening. His friend and the others have rented an Airbnb, and my boyfriend and I are supposed to take an Uber home since it is not too far. He mentioned going to the Airbnb after the rave, and I clearly stated that I do not feel comfortable with that. After a brief disagreement, he said he would go on his own and leave me there. This comment shocked me because he has never acted or spoken like that. He has always been a protective figure for me and is aware that I was spiked the last time I went to this place, which is causing me a great deal of stress. I truly do not know what I am trying to achieve here, but I feel the need for advice on how to handle this situation as I do not have many friends, and he is really the only person with whom I can talk. I'm aware that I may have left out some details, but my thoughts are honestly all over the place. I love him so much, and that is why this hurts so deeply. Could someone please offer any advice on how I might manage these situations better or improve my circumstances? I would be incredibly grateful. Thank you.